As Australia's motoring landscape continues to evolve, hybrid sales are up 60% compared to this time last year. And it's a trend that brands all across the market are paying attention to. A decade ago, Hyundai didn't even sell a hybrid model in Australia, and now they have hybrid versions of the i30 sedan, the Santa Fe large SUV, and this, the Tucson medium SUV, the newest hybrid in Hyundai's range. The motivation is obvious. The top-selling medium SUV in Australia is the Toyota RAV4, and while it used to be available in petrol-only versions, the entire range is now hybrid-powered. And Hyundai's not the only one to try and tackle that top seller. You can get hybrid versions of medium SUVs from Nissan, Subaru, Honda, Kia, and there are more coming. So we're going to take a look at the new Tucson hybrid and find out where it sits in that segment. The Tucson range is a little intimidating at first glance. There are 3 grades: the entry-level Tucson, mid-spec Tucson Elite, and range-topping Tucson Premium. And then there's a choice of engines: a non-turbo 2-litre petrol, 1.6-litre turbo petrol, or the 1.6-litre turbo petrol hybrid that we're driving here. From there, you can also get an optional N-line styling pack across all grades, just not on the 2-litre models. And all-wheel drive is available on the turbo and hybrid models, just not in the base spec. It's an intimidating model matrix with 17 variants to choose from. The cheapest hybrid you can buy is the one that we're driving today, simply called the Tucson Hybrid. It matches Hyundai's hybrid system to front-wheel drive and starts from $45,100 plus on-road costs. The non-hybrid version kicks off from just under 40 grand, while if you go all out, the top spec Tucson Premium N-Line Hybrid all-wheel drive is priced from just over $61,000. Standard equipment here includes features like LED headlights and taillights, new running light signatures and a new look grille, 18-inch alloy wheels, keyless entry and start, a 12.3-inch infotainment system with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, a wireless phone charger, 6-speaker stereo, dual-zone climate control, fabric seat trim, and a hefty list of safety and driver assist features, which I'll go into more detail on later. If all of that sounds good to you, you can start your search for a new Tucson now at Drive Marketplace. Or maybe a late model used car is more your style. There's thousands of vehicles to choose from at dealers all over Australia. As a midlife update to the Tucson, the styling changes aren't revolutionary. In fact, it's a little bit blink and you'll miss it, but there is a new grille up front and it has chunkier elements to define it, and that ties into new, bolder LED running lights. They're in the same position that they used to be, but everything is just a little bit enhanced. That then flows into a new bumper, and if you can pick the differences on that, you're probably doing better than me, but it is a little bit squarer and a little bit chunkier than it was before. Other than that, the styling continues largely unchanged. Along the body sides, everything is as sharp and as angular as it was when this generation of Tucson first arrived. Base model cars like this get 18-inch wheels, and if you move up to a higher spec or an N-line body kit, which is an option you can get on all grades, you get 19-inch wheels. At the rear, changes are even more subtle, if that's possible. All grades now get an LED rear light bar and tail lights, but they're in the same sort of fang shape that they were previously. There are some changes to the bumpers, and it's mostly centered around the indicators, which are still mounted down low in the bumper. How good an idea that is for visibility, I'm not sure. And of course, everyone's going to know that this one is a hybrid because it's got a hybrid badge. But other than that, it kind of blends into traffic just like the old Tucson did. While it's new for the Tucson in Australia, the hybrid powertrain used here is familiar across a range of Hyundai models, and it's the same one that you get in the larger Santa Fe hybrid. Now, like most hybrid systems, it can use a 4-cylinder petrol engine or an electric motor, either independently or in tandem, to power the wheels, and the car decides what's the most appropriate use of the powertrain for any given driving situation. Because this is a closed-loop hybrid, you don't need to plug the Tucson in. It can harvest energy under braking or use the engine to keep its small battery topped up. Overall system outputs are 172 kilowatts, 132 of which come from the 1.6-litre turbocharged petrol engine, and another 37 kilowatts are available from the electric motor. That power is then sent to the front wheels via a conventional 6-speed automatic transmission. Unlike other hybrids that use a CVT or an eCVT transmission, this one feels a lot more natural and a lot more familiar to drive. You can feel it change through gears and it doesn't slur or whir as you accelerate. Hyundai claims that it will use 5.3 litres per 100 kilometres, and when it comes time to fill it up, you only need to use 91 octane petrol. There's no need for premium here. Now, 5.3 litres is a pretty good figure for a car of this size, and I'm going to tell you how that finished up for me a little bit later on in this video. Now, in terms of warranty, you get a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty on the vehicle, and the hybrid battery comes with an 8-year 160,000 kilometre warranty. When it comes to servicing, Hyundai offers you a couple of options, so there's both capped price and prepaid service plans available. One of the great things about the interior of the Tucson is that it's not only spacious, but it's kind of designed to just enhance that feeling of room, and that works really well. So it's really apparent that you've got a lot of kind of swing space for your elbows and for drivers of all heights. One of the things that I kind of like is the detailing that goes into this model. It's a base model, but you wouldn't really know it. Yes, you get cloth seats, but then you also get like little cloth details on the dash and on the doors, and it just kind of elevates the experience a little bit. Almost everything you touch is a soft touch surface. There's soft on the top of the dash, there's soft on the doors, all the way down and on the armrests. So you're not kind of met with that cheap or tacky feeling hard plastic. That's saved for further down on the dash. In this updated Tucson, you get a reworked center console. So the gear lever isn't here anymore, which opens up a heap of space, and you get way more storage as a result. There's a wireless charger here, and it's probably the worst position for it. I mean, it's great to just kind of drop your phone on and go, and it's self-centering, and you don't have to worry about it missing because of the camera bump or anything like that. But this thing sits in full sun, so while it cooks your battery from underneath, it also cooks it from above, and your phone gets really, really hot. Other than that, you get a pair of cup holders, which is kind of regulation. You get a really deep center console, so that can take a ton of stuff. Like, that is a really usable area. And then underneath that, there is extra storage further down. But I can't help but wonder why the wireless charger maybe didn't go in this section down here. There's a pair of USB-C ports, and as is the case with most Hyundai or Kia vehicles, this button here will change one port from a data port, so for CarPlay if you're plugged in, or just charging. The other one is charge only. Then you get dual zone climate controls, which are laid out pretty easy to use, but Hyundai calls this a touch screen. It's not, it's a touch panel, and it does this weird thing where without buttons or anything for touch memory, anytime you slide your finger across it, it immediately registers as a touch. Great if it's the button that you wanted to press, but if you're on a bumpy road or moving around a bit, it doesn't work particularly well. Above that, there's a 12.3-inch touchscreen infotainment system, and it is a big, bright display that is fantastic to use. And like 12.3 inches is top end. For this to be in a base model is fantastic. And it lives in what looks like a one-panel display, but it's next to a small digital display for driver info, and then a pair of, I mean, there's no other word for it, LCD displays for speed and revs. And they are shown constantly. So the rev counter just sits at 0 when the hybrid system is doing hybrid things and the petrol engine is shut off. The gear lever on the column isn't my favorite thing because it tends to ignore some commands when you try to select the gear, but also from time to time you'll flick it and it doesn't move, thankfully, but instead of the indicator. So it's all just time, right? You get used to it the more you drive it. Other than that though, like, this is a nice place to be. It's spacious and it feels nice. I do have a question for Hyundai though, and it's this little detail on the seats. Like, why does it look like that? It reminds me of, you know, a roast that's been tied up. It's a weird little detail, and it kind of sits at odds with everything else that is so mature and so nice. There's not a lot of criticism that I can level at this car. Just like the front, the back seat continues the theme of being incredibly spacious. Now, I'm 169 centimeters tall, so a lot of cars feel spacious to me, but not going to lie, behind my own driving position, there is space, and then there is space, and then there is space. So there's plenty of leg room, and I guess what is crucial is that under the seats, there's a lot of toe room. So even if the driver has their seat positioned further back, you're still going to fit in without any worries. It's perhaps not as lavish back here. There's a lot more hard surfaces on the back doors, but it's still a nice enough place to spend time. You get a few features. There's air vents in the back of the center console and a pair of USB-C ports to keep devices charged. There's a fold-down armrest, which is, I guess, pretty typical. It's got a pair of cup holders in it, and it's a nice place to kind of stretch out and recline on longer journeys. Speaking of recline, this rear seat doesn't. This is its most reclined position, but you can actually put it more upright. That's not going to help you in terms of passenger accommodation, but it might help you put more stuff in the boot, or it might help you when it comes to positioning a child's seat. And if you want to do that, there's a pair of ISOFIX fixtures, one on each outboard seat, and there's 3 top tether mounts over the back of the back seats. And in terms of hiding stuff from view, there are map pockets that hide really well in the backs of the front seats. You also get a bottle holder in each back door, but one thing that the Tucson doesn't come with is a subscribe button, but there is one of those on YouTube. So if you'd like to hit that subscribe button, you can stay up to date with every review we do. From medium SUV reviews to sports cars to off-road adventures, we've got it all, and I'd love you to join us for that journey. Head to the boot of the Tucson, and one of the things that always mystifies me is why brands don't put the boot button above the number plate. That is just weird. Anyway, it's under here, so it's not the end of the world. And that reveals 582 litres of storage space with the rear seats up and 1,903 litres with them down. Now, there's a couple of things that are handy to have. One of my favourites is a lever that folds the seats. They don't fall completely flat, but whatever you're putting in that's long enough will shove the seats down for you. And a relocatable boot floor, but it's really clunky to use. Like, it's almost like the boot is too tight to actually move the floor. And then you got to line it up, and that doesn't go particularly well. And then you got to clip it in and drop it down. And that makes it kind of level with the boot opening. So it's just a little bit easier to get things in and out. A couple of other things in there as well. There's an LED light. There is a 12-volt power socket, and there's a couple of tie-down points at the side of the boot. So it means that you should be able to fit anything that your busy family life determines that you need, be that sporting equipment or prams or porta cots or whatever you're up to. This should do the job pretty easily. It's always a little bit hard to know when talking about hybrids what to prioritize. What is the most important thing to you in a hybrid car? Well, there's a few highlights to the Tucson hybrid actually. There's the fuel consumption, which is claimed at 5.3 litres per 100 Ks, and I'll get to that. There's the refinement, and give me a moment, but there's this, and it isn't a thing I thought I'd ever talk about in a hybrid car before. It's the drive modes. Now, there's 3 available in this car. There's an eco mode, which is really just its normal mode. There's a sport mode that is what it says it is. It's its sport mode. And there's something called My Mode, and that actually is one that you can set up yourself. And it gives you a couple of different options. And one that I've never seen before in a new car that's called Baby Mode. Now, the idea behind Baby Mode is that if you have sleeping kids in the back seat that you don't want to, I guess, wake up with too much abruptness, I guess is the term, the Baby Mode softens off initial accelerator input. So you accelerate like normal, but the car moves off more gently so that you don't quake little ones in the back and you don't wake them up or upset them if they're fussy travellers. Does it work? Realistically, it's no different to a winter mode, which is also supposed to soften off initial acceleration. So I guess it's just that with a much more family-friendly and marketable name. But it's interesting to see it there. So basically you can set baby mode as your My Mode. There's also a smart mode that jumps between eco and sport mode. Depending on what you do or how you drive, it determines what the right drive mode is, I guess. But yeah, it's not something I've seen before in a car, and I feel like baby mode is an interesting addition, if perhaps not an essential one. Now, what about the rest of the package? Well, it works well, and you'd probably be hard pressed to pick that the Tucson hybrid is a hybrid at all. The only giveaway most of the time is that the tacho is sitting at 0 RPM when the electric system is doing its thing without the petrol engine. So it's pretty quiet and refined, and when the petrol engine does kick in, it usually does so without creating a giant roar or shaking the cabin too much. Even at 100 k's an hour, you can have this car engine on and then engine off, and it'll just shuffle between those modes, maintain speed, and you don't need to worry about it. When it's got enough charge, it'll run electrically, and unlike a Toyota hybrid system, which tends to feel maybe a little bit feeble, and I use them purely because they kind of are the benchmark and the car that everyone is familiar with, this car doesn't feel feeble, and it doesn't feel timid off the line. In fact, it'll run from a standstill up to 50 k's and beyond before it turns on the petrol engine, and Toyota hybrids kind of struggle to do that a little bit. The rest of the refinement overall is pretty good too. Wind noise is quite well managed, and the tyres aren't noisy in this car. So even at freeway speeds on coarse chip country roads, you're not hearing too much of the road surface filter into the cabin, which is good. It makes it great as a mile eater or a long tourer, and it's just as at home out on the open road as it is in suburbia like this. Now, the crucial question with this car is, of course, its consumption. So keep in mind that claimed figure is 5.3 litres per 100 k's. And I don't know, maybe 99% of the cars that come through the Drive garage struggle to meet their claimed fuel efficiency. It's just how it is. Those are lab-derived results, and we're not in strict test conditions. We're out on the open road, in real traffic, doing real driving, and most of the time in real peak hour. This car has kind of blown me away a little bit because it's actually managed to come in under its claimed fuel consumption, and that isn't something that happens too often. In a mix of driving conditions, I'm using an indicated 4.8 litres per 100 kilometres. Now, I've done the bulk of that driving in its default eco mode. I haven't explored sport mode too much, and it's been a mix of urban commuting plus a little bit of highway stretch. That's my daily commute. But that highway stretch is a lot of stop-start on the freeway in zones that should be 80 or 100 k's and end up being 20 or less. And that's really bad for fuel consumption. And yet somehow in this car, it isn't bad for fuel consumption at all. And I feel like a big part of that is the heavy lifting that the electric motor can do. Because as you shuffle through very slow traffic, the petrol engine just resolutely stays switched off, which is, again, good for not only refinement, but it's what helps keep that fuel figure as low as it is. One thing that I have noticed though is that somehow, and I'm not quite sure the engineering reasoning behind it, this car isn't great at short trips. So if you're doing a 5-minute hop, say to the shops and then to home, or a quick drop off at school, it never really seems to return good fuel consumption figures. And I think that might be because it's spending that time warming up the petrol engine more than anything else. Once you're beyond that 5-minute threshold, take a 10 or 15-minute drive, the consumption drops, like it plummets. And that is, I guess, what ends up being the kind of conditions that most people do most of the time. It might sound like damning it with faint praise, but ultimately this is a car that doesn't disrupt or interrupt you in any significant way. And although that doesn't sound like the hallmark of a great car, it's about as much as you can ask for. Clearly there's some thought put into making it that way. Baby mode is a perfect example. But realistically, this is, I guess not middle of the road, but hardly poor performing, which actually stands it in good stead overall. Now, if you think a car like this might be for you, head to drive.com.au/marketplace, where you can browse new, used and demonstrator cars from dealers all across the country. And you can filter by body type, so SUV, by fuel type, so hybrid, and you can find the best fit for you. The Tucson Hybrid comes with autonomous emergency braking, front and rear parking sensors, lane keep assist and lane departure warning, a rear view camera, blind spot warning, and adaptive cruise control that has options to tune not only the follow distance, but also the speed and aggression of acceleration, making it easy to match to your driving style. Arguably, one of the biggest changes for the 2025 Tucson is the introduction of a shortcut to mute the annoying intelligent speed limit assist function. By default, the speed limit monitoring can be intrusive, but now there's an option to press and hold the steering wheel mute button to mute the audible overspeed warning that sounds whenever the car strays above a posted speed limit. Now, this can be handy when the system misreads a speed zone or in situations where multiple speed limit signs or time-specific zones feed the wrong info to the system. The great thing about the Hyundai Tucson Hybrid is that even as an entry-level model, it doesn't feel like an entry-level model. There's some really nice touches in the interior and some features that you may not find in other entry-level medium SUVs. Not everything has a 12.3-inch touchscreen, dual-zone climate control, and a wireless phone charger, and those are all really nice features to have. There's enough room in the back seat and the boot for growing families, but the biggest lure by far is the small fuel consumption. Of course, Hyundai isn't alone in offering hybrid technology in a package like this. But the upside is that the implementation here is actually really good. It feels nice to drive on the road. It is both powerful when you need it to be, but quiet and refined where you expect it to be. But the practicality hasn't been negatively impacted despite the need to house additional hardware for the hybrid system. Now, there's a lot more detail to cover on this car than what you've seen here, and you can check out my full written review at Drive.com.au. All right, maybe the Tucson is close, but not quite what you're after in a hybrid SUV. That's okay, because there's also the Kia Sportage Hybrid, and we've got a video of that car right here. So click on that link and check it out, and maybe it's going to be the right fit for you.